Under the oak tree. When Maxi returned late that evening, she learned that Riftan would be leaving for a monster raid in 2 days' time, and she found herself overcome with anxiety once again. Riftan, however, seemed oblivious to her distress. No one in the castle worked harder than he did. All day long, he inspected the land, trained soldiers, and scoured the area outside the walls to wipe out monsters or plunderers who might be lying in wait. And when that was done, he went to check on the progress of construction in the village, discuss taxes with the tax collectors, and ensure that no one was causing trouble in the estate. Though he worked day and night, he never showed signs of fatigue. Could it be that Riftan was made of iron? Most people would have been drained by such duties, but Riftan performed them as if they were no more difficult than shelling peas. Maxi focused her thoughts on Riftan's resilience to forget what Ruth had told her that afternoon. Riftan Calypse was no ordinary human. He was strong enough to overcome any trial, and there was no need for her to fret over something that had yet to pass. Maxi licked her chapped lips and tried to speak as calmly as possible. "Where are you going?" "I've received reports that a horde of goblins has settled on that mountain." Riftan pointed to one of the mountain peaks outside the window. "It'll likely take 4 to 5 days to wipe them all out. Won't it be dangerous?" Maxi looked at him anxiously. "Are you worried that a goblin might hurt me?" Riftan snorted and gave her an incredulous look. "Goblins are a nuisance, but they aren't dangerous. I'd say goblin raids are only a tad more bothersome than hunting rabbits. If they aren't dangerous, can't they just be left alone?" Riftan frowned in displeasure. "Maxi, it is my duty to protect this land. Are you suggesting that I shirk my responsibilities?" Maxi shrank at his sharp tone. "Goblins may not be powerful creatures, but they're prolific breeders. If they aren't wiped out, they will multiply at an alarming rate and attack merchants or destroy our hunting grounds. I must make sure that doesn't happen." "I'm sorry. That was presumptuous of me." After studying Maxi's pained face for a moment, Riftan let out a long sigh. "I'm not mad at you. Come here, Maxi." He held out his hand to her. Maxi looked at his outstretched hand for a moment. Then he reached for her, and she promptly fell into his arms. He rubbed his nose against her shoulders, twisting her hair around his hand, inhaling deeply its aroma. "I'm leaving our bed to sleep on the cold, hard ground, not because I want to, but because I have to." Maxi remained silent as she stroked his thick, black hair. The thought of him having to sleep outside in freezing conditions made her heart ache. Was it the fate of a knight's wife to live with such anxiety? Perhaps noble couples kept their spouses at an arm's length to protect themselves from anguish. She feared that she had become too attached to Riftan. "As soon as the compensation from Livadon arrives tomorrow, I'll be expelling those prisoners. Ruth tells me the magical device will be ready by then. And with the new gate almost finished, everything should be fine, even if I'm away for a short while. You have nothing to worry about. I understand." I know Riftan is different from normal people. He's tenacious. He works endlessly from dawn to dusk to manage his estate without ever showing signs of fatigue. And I know I shouldn't fret over something that won't ever happen, but the thought of him sleeping outside in this bitter winter breaks my heart. Maybe I shouldn't get so attached to him. The next day, a new steel gate sturdy enough to withstand an ogre's hammer was installed, and the magical devices Ruth had created were mounted on either side. The devices resembled ivory discs, each roughly the size of a pumpkin. Maxi followed Riftan to the gate to watch as the fruits of her labor were mounted on the watchtowers. The red magic stone that Ruth had shown her adorned the center of each disc, and the rims were inscribed with ancient script. "What is this made of?" Maxi ran a hand over the smooth surface of the device. "Basilisk bones," said Ruth. Maxi drew her hand back in shock. "Bones?" Creatures of the Iron race such as basilisks, wyverns, lizards, and earth dragons possess powerful defensive magic, so most protective devices are made with their bones. Maxi studied the smooth, polished disc. Knowing what they were made of caused the hairs on her nape to stand up. Ruth clicked his tongue. "No need to look so appalled. They're just bones. This can't be your first time touching them, seeing as you eat meat." But these are monster bones. Ruth simply let out a snort and turned his attention back to the device. He secured it to a stone pillar using clay, then exited the gates. Maxi was about to follow him out when Riftan, who had been busy giving orders to the guards, stopped her. "Where do you think you're going? It's dangerous out there." "But Ruth's a high mage. He can protect himself. Now stay put, or I'll have to send you back to the castle." Maxi nodded meekly. Riftan ordered the sentries to protect her, then they proceeded up the rampart to give Ruth a signal. A massive flame began to form outside the walls. Suddenly, it came hurtling toward the gate with a roar. Maxi screamed. The ground shook, and a towering barrier sprang from the ground to block the flying flames. Maxi watched stunned. The villagers who had come to watch were slumped on the ground. The knight guarding Maxi let out a whistle. He's always loved a good spectacle. Seeing that the knights were calm, Maxi realized that such a scene was nothing out of the ordinary for them. They had undoubtedly experienced far more ghastly things. "Good," Riftan bellowed. "It's working. Open the gates." At his command, the heavy steel gates swung open. Ruth trudged in, covered in dirt. "Was that really necessary?" he asked. "We have to show them that Anatole is impenetrable even while I'm away," Riftan said, slowly making his way down from the wall. "This ought to dissuade anyone from even thinking about invading us." Well, if rumor spreads that Anatole's defenses are impenetrable, more peddlers might be inclined to do business here, which isn't a bad thing. Maxi realized then that testing the new magical devices had not been the sole purpose of the demonstration. Riftan had also been trying to reassure the people of Anatole that their home was safe. She saw him exchange a few words with the knights before approaching her. "It's time for you to return to the castle. What about you?" "I'm going to transfer the intruders to the envoy from Livadon. Ruth and Heberon, I want you to escort her ladyship to the castle and start preparing for the goblin raid." Before she could say anything, Riftan turned and walked away with the knights, his cape fluttering behind him. She watched his receding figure before mounting Remington. Ruth and the ginger knight followed suit. "So, we're off to the mountains again," Heberon grumbled as he led the way. "And here I thought I could sleep in the comfort of my own bed for a while." Ruth smirked. "Just a while ago, I heard you say your muscles were aching from inaction. Why don't you try sleeping out in the snow?" "I must decline respectfully. That's a death sentence for a delicate sorcerer such as myself." Heberon snorted. "Delicate? I don't know a single Remdragon knight who has skin as thick as yours. That, Sir Heberon, is only your opinion." Maxi rolled her eyes, unable to tell whether they were bantering or bickering. When they reached the town square, Ruth suddenly slowed his horse. "Let us stop by the market." Heberon turned to him, clearly irritated. "We can't stop to let you go about your personal business. Come back on your own later." For now, Heberon trailed off and threw a furtive glance at Maxi. Ruth sighed. "Can't you stop treating her ladyship as if she were a contagious boil?" "Come now, winded eye. You're treating her as if she's invisible. Give it a rest." A sheepish look spread across Heberon's face. Before he could make a retort, Ruth turned his horse around to face Maxi. "I just have a few more items to buy, and I must get them while the peddlers are still here as they won't be coming back for some time. And it's a chance for you to see the market." Maxi hesitantly glanced at Heberon. Looking disgruntled, the knight let out a sigh and turned his horse in the direction of the market. Maxi quickly followed after them. "What are you looking for?" "Herbs and magic stones." Despite the cold weather, the market was bustling. Merchants were selling nearly everything under the sun from the tents they had pitched. Animal hides and bones, coarse fabric, and rustic ornaments lined one side of the market, while the other side was filled with stalls selling meat, bread, potatoes, and sacks of grain and acorns. Startled by the merchants' booming voices, Maxi pressed herself closer to Ruth. "Sorcerer." "Aye." "Slow down. It isn't easy to escort someone in this crowd." But even Heberon's thunderous voice was drowned out by the noise of the market. Maxi nervously looked around her. "Worry not, my lady. The chances of an attack are slim." That's not very reassuring. Anatole is quite secure. Acting so cautious will only attract unwanted attention. Maxi flinched and tried to look calm. Seeing this, Ruth shook his head before coming to a stop at a stall. Plant roots of unknown use, bottled powders of mysterious origin, and thin twigs were strewn across a wooden board covered in black cloth. Ruth began to inspect the items. "Are these all herbs?" Heberon asked. Despite his grumbling, he was craning his neck to peer at the items. Ruth ignored the question and beckoned to the youth handling herbs in the corner. "I'd like 20 seagull of each type. How much will that cost?" "They're 1 dirham for 10 seagull," the kind-faced youth answered. "These are rare herbs of high quality. For 20 seagull of each kind, it'll be 40 dirham. Do you accept payment in liram?" "Of course. Let me bring the scale." Maxi watched as the youth carefully weighed the dry herbs on a brass scale. Ruth placed each bundle inside a small pouch, then took out 4 silver coins from a purse. The peddler also placed these on the scale. "Why is he weighing them?" Maxi asked in a whisper. "He's checking to see if they're real silver. Counterfeit coins have been increasing lately. Some scoundrels have even started shaving coins to make new ones." "They shave the coins?" "Yes, the way people shake gold coins in wicker baskets to obtain gold dust. They gather the dust to create new coins, and that leaves the old coins weighing less. But that doesn't concern us. My coins are as good as new." Ruth took out more coins to show Maxi. Their edges were crisp. Satisfied, the peddler slipped the money into his pocket, then placed 8 flat dirham coins on the scale. After checking their weight just like the peddler had, Ruth took the coins. Tight-fisted as always, Heberon scoffed. Ruth remained unfazed. "I'd call it being meticulous." He proceeded to the stall on the opposite side, where he began haggling over a stone as large as a fist with a man who appeared to be a mercenary. While he was busy, Maxi perused the other stalls. She saw beaded daggers, wooden animal figurines, embroidered belts, copper brooches, and colorful fabrics that had been braided into tassels. Maxi pointed at one of the tassels. "What is this?" The question was directed at Ruth, but the sorcerer was already haggling with the merchant several steps away. Embarrassed, Maxi was trying to leave when she heard a brusque voice answer her question. "These are ornaments that can be attached to sword belts." Maxi looked up in surprise to see Heberon leaning over to examine the tassel. Many adventurers believe these will grant them the protection of the nymphs. They tie them here, like this. Heberon pointed to the colorful braided tassel hanging from the leather sword belt around his waist. Maxi's eyes moved uncertainly from the tassel to the knight's face. "I've never seen one before. Riftan doesn't wear one. He's too proud to rely on superstition. It's all hogwash to him." There was a hint of fondness in his sarcastic tone. Maxi relaxed and gave the knight a small smile. "That sounds like him. But he might carry one around if it comes from your ladyship." Heberon scratched the back of his head. "Why don't you pick one out?" Maxi blinked, both baffled and elated by the show of goodwill. "Aren't they expensive? This little trinket?" Maxi blushed, afraid that he might think her a fool. She chose a short tassel made of red, green, and orange fabric. Without asking the price, Heberon handed the merchant a coin. "Keep the change." The merchant looked surprised. It seemed that Heberon had paid far more than the usual price. "I will compensate you when we're back at the castle." "That won't be necessary. I'm no miser, which is more than I can say for the sorcerer." With a shrug, Heberon began walking toward Ruth. Maxi took the tassel from the merchant and quickly followed. She wanted to thank Heberon, but he had gone back to ignoring her and was now grumbling at Ruth for dawdling. Ruth stuffed his purchases in a sack and waved his hand dismissively. Yes. Let us go." Ruth led his horse toward a less crowded area. Once they were out of the market, they mounted their horses and rode back to Calyp's castle. Maxi was able to gallop through the winding, hilly paths with ease. Soon, they reached the moat. "Who will be participating in the raid this time?" Ruth asked. Heberon the knight stroked his chin, thinking for a moment. "Gable and I will be taking some of the squires. It's about time they got some real experience. We're about to enjoy some peace and quiet at the castle then." Heberon laughed. I'll ask the commander to bring you along. I'm sure he would refuse. It's best that I remain here in case of a crisis. Heberon let out a long sigh. You're right. Enjoy the peace while it lasts. Before you know it, we'll be back livening things up just outside your tower. Maxi could not help but feel envious of the camaraderie in their banter. Riftan, too, looked most at ease when he was in the company of other knights. Even their quarrels seemed good-humored. Having led a solitary life, she found their bonds captivating. Heberon spurred his horse forward and galloped ahead through the gates. Ruth simply shrugged. Ruth turned to her as they entered the castle. Now, if you'll excuse me, my lady, I'll be off to get some much-needed rest. I've been living like a cave bat because of those accursed magical devices. And I thank you again for your assistance. I wouldn't have been able to finish them so quickly otherwise. I am happy to be of help. Ruth grinned. I'll be sure to provide another opportunity soon. Maxi tried to frown, but she found her lips curling up into a smile instead. How wonderful it would be to be accepted into their company. What would it be like to feel as if she belonged? The next day, Riftan rose before the crack of dawn. Maxi raised her drowsy body, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Seeing this, Riftan chuckled and kissed her cheek. Go back to bed. No need for you to wake up too. I want to get up. When she was fully dressed, she sat down in front of the mirror to comb her hair. Riftan walked up behind her, dressed in a navy blue tunic and thick leather trousers. Give me the comb. Maxi acquiesced, though she could not fathom why he liked touching her unruly hair so much. Holding the tiny comb in his calloused hand, Riftan began to brush her hair. Maxi blushed at the care and caution he was exercising. After gently untangling her hair, he deftly braided it into a 4-strand plait. Riftan looked down proudly at his handiwork. I'm becoming rather skilled at this, don't you think? Maxi impulsively planted a kiss on his chin. Feeling his whole body stiffen, she wondered why her taking the initiative seemed to bewilder him when he seemed to have no qualms about showering her with kisses whenever he pleased. That was a kiss of thanks, she said, trying to hide her bashfulness. Riftan sighed in disappointment. I am loath to leave. Don't make it harder. That wasn't my intention. He abruptly pulled her into an embrace, startling her. He let out a low groan and buried his face into her neck. We'll pick up where we left off when I get back, he said. Maxi admired the dashing man before her. She suddenly remembered the trinket she had bought at the market the day before. She rummaged through the drawers for the colorful tassel. Riftan. Riftan turned to look at her inquiringly. After a moment of hesitation, Maxi held out the tassel. I bought this at the market yesterday on our way back to the castle. Sir Heberon told me that attaching this to a sword belt grants the wearer the protection of the nymphs. Riftan stared blankly at her hand. Sir Heberon was the one who paid for it, but I picked it out. If it's all right with you. Her voice faltered when he made no move to take the tassel. Perhaps Sir Heberon had been right. Riftan really must consider such trinkets useless. Masking her disappointment, she slowly lowered her hand. You don't have to take it if it doesn't please you. She turned to put the tassel back in the chest, but a hand suddenly grabbed her arm. Give it here. Maxi turned around in surprise. Thank you. I will treasure it. Riftan covered his face to hide his smile, but the flush that crept up to the tips of his ears did not escape Maxi's attention. Her heart swelled with pride when she realized that Riftan was genuinely happy. He abruptly pulled her into an embrace, startling her. Slowly, she wrapped her arms around his waist. He let out a low groan and buried his face into her neck. Seeing his delight at a gift she had bought on a whim, she was struck by the urge to slap herself. Then suddenly, she felt angry at herself. She had only bought the paltry gift at Sir Heberon's suggestion. Though she did not have the means to buy anything that could compare to the gifts he had given her, she could have bought him something better. I'll be back before you know it. When he was ready to leave, Riftan pulled Maxi in for a final embrace. She burrowed her face against his chest, holding back tears and resolving to give to him everything she could.